To this point, it's an amazing statistic. 54% of those polled in our survey find that they're no longer confident in the president's ability to get the job done. That is a leadership moment that's a low moment for the president. And as he's got so much to deal with overseas, I think when it comes to immigration reform, that's largely dead. I've talked to Senator Rand Paul for the program on Sunday, who does not see immigration reform coming out of Congress this year, and certainly not with any pathway to citizenship, which is what the White House wants. So that's an economic issue. It's an economic growth issue, and it's a real legacy issue for the president who wanted it badly.
This is awfully early for a second-term malaise for this president, isn't it?
Well, the malaise part has been going on a long time, Bill. I think it is certainly early to pronounce a term to be largely ineffective, but this is a second term. You can go back to a similar moment for President Bush, different circumstances with Iraq, even though that's back in the news, and Katrina, of course. But it is about the same issue, which is how much political capital does the president have left? The presidential cycles are accelerated in a midterm election year. The prospect of legislation has really kind of stalled out. So the president's largely thinking about executive action on issues like immigration, on climate, et cetera, instead of really building a coalition in Congress.
And meantime, with the Republican Party, it's not exactly like everything's peachy there. I mean, they have new leadership now. They have to coalesce around some common ideas and issues as they march to 2016.
Yeah, you know, it's a very interesting point. In fact, the Republican Party is less popular than the president or the Democratic Party. The president's approval rating is slightly lower. But the Republican Party has some real problems. And the Republicans I talk to say, well, part of the problem is that Americans are just so frustrated with Washington, period, across the board, Republicans and Democrats, because Washington isn't getting anything accomplished. And so it becomes a huge issue, not just for Republican versus Democrat, but for those who seem to be kind of the moneyed corporate interests and the kind of Washington insiders. There's a populism on the right we think of as the Tea Party. It's on the left as well. We think of it as Elizabeth Warren. Those folks have a lot in common. They may not agree on the way out, but their frustration about the system being kind of rigged against them, that's what they share. And that's a really interesting political dynamic.
Speaking of political dynamics, what happens with Iraq now, do you think? I mean, how much more will this president do beyond 300 advisors going on the ground there?
It's interesting. I think from the president's point of view, this is a terrorism problem. ISIS, it goes beyond Iraq. It goes into Syria as well. It has to be dealt with. This is a huge problem for the United States, a potential a terrorist army, which is really what it is, that could set its sights on attacks against the United States. That's a fact. The other part of it is that there is a huge civil war that's raging, and it starts with Iraq, but of course it extends into Syria as well. And so the leader of Iraq, Nouri al-Maliki, is somebody who doesn't have any credibility left in the region. And there are those inside of Iraq, maybe they're Kurds, maybe they're Sunnis, who don't want to stand up to this terrorist army because they don't want to help Maliki. So you see the president saying, we're going to try to do what we can with potential air power strikes, drone strikes perhaps, to degrade this al-Qaeda offshoot known as ISIS. At the same time, he's sending Secretary Kerry and putting a lot of political pressure to force Maliki out and to try to form a new Iraqi government.